They trained you to stay poor and you didn't even notice. From school to society, every step was designed to make you obedient, not wealthy. You were taught to trade time for money, fear debt, chase passion over profit, and avoid risk like it's poison. But what if that script was never meant to serve you? What if money was a game you were never shown how to play? On purpose. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to wake up, because once you learn how money really works, the script burns and the power shifts. Ready to break free? They don't want you to think. That's the truth. You were never taught how to think, only what to think. From the time you were a child, the system carefully molded you, not into a leader, not into a creator, but into an obedient worker. They told you to sit still, raise your hand, follow instructions, memorize what's in the book, repeat it back on a test. And if you do all that well, you get a gold star. You get a pat on the head. And if you keep doing it long enough, they say you'll get a good life. But here's the thing they didn't tell you. The people handing out the gold stars are the same ones keeping you broke. Think about it. Who created the school system? Industrialists. People who needed factory workers, clerks, employees, not owners. They needed people who followed rules, not people who disrupted them. So they built an assembly line of education, a conveyor belt from kindergarten to college, designed not to teach you freedom, but to teach you compliance. That system wasn't designed to make you rich. It was designed to make you useful to someone else. You weren't taught about cash flow, ownership, leverage, or how to acquire real assets. You were taught algebra and Shakespeare. Nothing wrong with those things, but you can't build wealth on a sonnet. You were handed a script, go to school, get good grades, get into college, find a job, work hard, climb the ladder, and then maybe, just maybe, if you do it right, for 40 years you can retire with enough to survive. That's not a plan. That's a trap. You were trained to be a cog, to play a small role in someone else's machine. And every time you tried to step out of line, what happened? You were punished. You colored outside the lines, detention. You challenged the teacher, disrespectful. You questioned the material. Your difficulty is what makes entrepreneurs. Disruption is what makes innovators. Rebellion is what makes millionaires. The system doesn't reward that because it's terrified of what happens when people wake up and realize they were built for more. You've been programmed to equate credentials with success. The diploma becomes your golden ticket, but that golden ticket doesn't buy freedom. It buys 40-hour weeks at a job you secretly hate. It buys the illusion of security while you trade your time, your most valuable asset, for just enough to stay afloat. You think the system failed you? No. The system did exactly what it was designed to do. Let me ask you something. Why don't they teach you how taxes work in school? Or how credit works, or how to buy a business, or how to negotiate equity? Because if you understood those things early on, you'd stop being a worker, you'd start being an owner. And when you become an owner, you stop being dependent. When you stop being dependent, you start making your own rules. And when you start making your own rules, you're no longer profitable to the people who rely on your ignorance. Breaking this script means re-educating yourself, not with more degrees, but with a different kind of knowledge. It means studying how money moves, how businesses operate, how wealthy people think. It means reading boring balance sheets instead of binge-watching shows. It means spending your weekends learning how to buy back your time instead of burning it. It means questioning everything they told you was normal, because normal is broke, stressed, underpaid, and overworked. The truth is, success in this system often requires unlearning more than it does learning. You have to unlearn the belief that authority always knows best. Unlearn the idea that security comes from staying in line. Unlearn the myth that being busy is the same as being productive. Real power comes from questioning the narrative and writing your own. And let's be honest, deep down, you've always known something was off. You've felt it. That pit in your stomach when you sit in traffic on the way to a job that doesn't fulfill you. That quiet resentment when you realize your paycheck doesn't reflect your effort. That gnawing suspicion that the life you were promised doesn't feel like freedom. You were right to feel that way because you were trained for a life of limitation, not liberation. But the moment you see the system for what it is, everything changes. You start to understand that the classroom was never meant to teach you how to build wealth. It was meant to teach you how to obey. And if obedience got you this far, maybe it's rebellion that takes you further. You want to break the script? Start with this. Question everything they told you was true. They trained you to believe that your time equals money. that the only honest, respectable path to wealth is to put in 40 hours a week, maybe more if you're ambitious, and climb the corporate ladder rung by rung for decades. Work hard, keep your head down, and eventually you'll be rewarded with a promotion, a raise, a pension. But let's be real. How's that working out for most people? They're exhausted, underpaid, and still living paycheck to paycheck. That system was never designed to make you rich. It was designed to make you dependable. You were sold a dream that doesn't exist anymore. Back when pensions were real and a single salary could buy a house, maybe that trade-off made sense, but not today. Today, your rent is up 30%, your groceries are up 40%, and your salary is still crawling. So if you're still trading your time for money, you're not just playing the wrong game. You're playing their game. And the house always wins. The wealthy figured this out a long time ago. They realized that time is the most valuable currency, and they treat it that way. You're out here selling yours by the hour. They're out here buying other people's time to build assets. You're trying to save for retirement. They're trying to buy back their time now, not 30 years from now. They use leverage, money, people, systems to create income streams that work when they don't. Let me break it down for you. You show up, clock in, do the job, get paid. That's linear income. You get what you earn, nothing more. It's a direct exchange of energy. And it's capped. Even if you're highly skilled, there's a ceiling. You only have so many hours in a day. But the wealthy, they don't want to be paid for their hours. They want to be paid for their ideas, for their ownership, for the systems they build and the assets they hold. They're playing an exponential game. Most of us were taught to be employees, not owners. We were taught to value stability over freedom. But here's the harsh truth. Stability is a lie when you don't own anything. That safe job can disappear with one bad quarter. That company you've been loyal to for 10 years can lay you off with a polite email and no warning. There's nothing secure about being disposable. Ownership, not employment, is the new safety net. They trained you to believe that making money while you sleep was some sort of scam or fantasy, but it's not. It's how wealth is actually built. It's called cash flow. It comes from assets like businesses, real estate, intellectual property. And no, you don't need millions to get started. You don't need some fancy degree. What you need is to stop believing the lie that hard work alone is the key to success. Because if that were true, every single construction worker and nurse would be a millionaire. Look around. Who are the people working the hardest? Who are the ones sweating, grinding, pulling doubles? And who are the ones profiting off that labor? You already know. The people who own the machines make more than the people who operate them. The people who own the building make more than the people cleaning it, and the people who own the business make more than everyone else combined. So the question is, how long are you going to keep selling your time when you could start buying your freedom? It starts with building something that makes money without you. It could be a small, boring business. It could be a piece of digital real estate. It could be a service that runs on automation and contractors. The specifics don't matter as much as the mindset shift. Stop being the worker. Start becoming the owner. Because the truth is, no one's going to hand you this. No boss, no politician, no system is going to save you. They weren't designed to. That's the script they wrote for you. Be grateful, be quiet, be overworked and underpaid, but you don't have to follow it. You can write your own. You can opt out of the time for money trap and build a life where your time is yours again. The moment you stop selling your time is the moment you start buying your freedom. You were told that debt is dangerous, that it's something to fear, that it's a trap, a weight, a burden you must avoid at all costs, that the only good debt is no debt. But what they didn't tell you is this. The wealthy use debt as a weapon. The truth is, it's not the debt that's dangerous. It's your understanding of it. They trained you to fear the very thing they use to win. You see, there are two kinds of debt in this world, consumer debt and strategic debt. One keeps you poor, the other can make you rich. And here's the punch in the gut. Most people only know one kind. You were trained to take on debt that depreciates, debt that extracts from you. Car loans, credit cards, fancy vacations, overpriced degrees that may never pay you back. You were handed the chains and told it was freedom. And the more you bought in, the deeper the system pulled you down. Now contrast that with the kind of debt the rich use. They don't take debt to consume. They take debt to acquire, to build, to multiply. They borrow to buy cash-flowing real estate. They use leverage to acquire boring businesses. They structure deals where they don't even use their own money, just capital they've raised or borrowed, backed by assets that produce income. And they do it legally, strategically, And repeatedly, while you're hustling to pay off your student loans, someone else is using that same amount of debt to buy a laundromat or a storage unit facility that pays them every single month without them lifting a finger. This is where the script completely flips. You were taught to play defense, get out of debt, cut up your credit cards, save every penny. And while you're living small, they're living leveraged. They understand that money is not just about saving, it's about scaling. They use good debt to buy their time back, to build passive income, to create generational wealth. And they taught you the opposite, because if you understood the power of leveraged income, you'd stop trading time for money. You'd stop asking for permission. You'd stop playing the game by their rules. Now, I'm not saying go out and take on any debt blindly. This isn't about buying liabilities and calling it strategy. It's about learning to use money like a tool, not like a crutch. It's about putting capital into places where it multiplies, where it pays you back, where it works harder than you ever could. The rich borrow to grow, the poor borrow to survive. That's the dividing line. And don't think this is only for people with trust funds or Wall Street connections. There are people buying businesses today with SBA loans, seller financing, creative deals, acquiring cash flowing companies with as little as 10% down, sometimes even less. These are not unicorns. This is not fantasy. This is simply a different financial language. And the reason you never learned it is because the system profits off your ignorance. It profits when you play it safe, when you save in high yield accounts that barely beat inflation, when you max out your credit cards but never build equity, when you spend 40 years working for money instead of having money work for you. But here's the part that should wake you up. Your fear of debt is exactly what keeps you from freedom, because the path to ownership often requires leverage, and ownership is the only true security. If you own the thing that prints money, you are no longer dependent, not on your job, not on the economy, not on anyone else's decisions. But ownership often begins with a risk, a calculated, strategic, intentional risk. The kind of risk that schools never taught you to take, but that the wealthy take all the time. You don't need to become reckless. You need to become educated. Stop asking, is this debt? Start asking, what does this debt produce? If it puts money in your pocket each month, if it builds equity, if it buys you time, it might be worth every dollar. If it costs you peace, costs you income, costs you freedom, it's not debt, it's a leash. Know the difference. The fastest way to shift your financial trajectory is to understand the tools that were hidden from you. Debt, when used correctly, is one of the most powerful tools ever created. The banks knew that, the wealthy knew that, and now you do too. So stop letting the fear they planted in you hold the pen. It's time to write your own script. They sold you a beautiful lie. Do what you love, and the money will follow. That phrase has been echoed in classrooms, Instagram quotes, and commencement speeches for decades. And sure, it sounds noble, but let's be honest. How many people do you know who followed their passion and are still broke? Probably too many. It's because the truth is far less romantic. If you chase passion without understanding profits, you'll stay stuck. Passion without a business model is just a hobby, and hobbies don't pay the bills. The system wants you to believe that money and meaning are at odds, that if you're making a lot of money, you must be soulless, greedy, or selling out. That's part of the conditioning. The narrative says, choose purpose over profits, like they're mutually exclusive. But guess who doesn't think like that? The people with money, the people who own assets, the ones with leverage. They don't separate the two. They align them. They build businesses that make money, and once they have financial freedom, then they do whatever the hell they want. And if they're really smart, they build businesses that are their passions, but only after the money is secure. It's wild how often people come to me asking how to find their passion. They're waiting for some divine spark. But the truth is, your passion is irrelevant if it can't feed you. This world runs on money, not because money is everything, but because it buys the one thing that is your time. You want to write a book, travel the world, start a nonprofit? Amazing, but all of that takes time, and time costs money. So before you go off chasing fulfillment, build something that funds your freedom, because without that, passion becomes just another trap, something you reach for but never quite grasp. And here's the thing they really don't want you to know. Profit can be a passion. Making money can be a game. It can be creative, fulfilling, even thrilling. if you reframe how you look at it. But they trained you to believe that money is dirty, that business is boring, that spreadsheets and sales calls are beneath you. Why? Because if you believed that profit could set you free, you'd stop trading time for money. You'd stop taking orders. You'd stop participating in the machine. And they can't have that. Think about the people who really win in life. They didn't start with passion. They started with cash flow. They bought boring businesses. They invested in things other people ignored. They understood margins, scalability, recurring revenue. And then once they weren't waking up every day worrying about rent or gas prices, they explored their passions with freedom, with clarity, with options. That's what financial independence buys you. Optionality. And optionality is power. Let me say it straight. If you're waking up every day wondering how to pay bills, you don't have the luxury to just do what you love. That advice is not for you yet. That advice is for people whose bills are already covered, whose income is uncapped, and who've built assets that take care of their basic needs without trading time for every dollar. Until you get there, you need to learn to love cash flow. You need to fall in love with discipline, systems, deals, and strategy. That's the grind that gets you out of the grind. But here's the good news. You don't have to sacrifice your soul to make money. That's another lie they fed you. You can lead with integrity. You can build with purpose. You can serve people and solve problems and still make damn good money. In fact, that's the most sustainable path. But don't confuse that with blindly following your feelings. Feelings are fleeting. Emotions don't build empires. Execution does. So what do? You stop romanticizing struggle. You stop worshiping passion for its own sake. You start looking for what the market wants, what problems you can solve, where money flows. You find the overlap between value and demand. And once the money flows, then you reinvest it into yourself, into your freedom, into whatever lights you up, but not before, because freedom isn't found in following your heart. It's found in funding your life. Do what you love, sure, but make sure it pays you. Otherwise, you're just another broke dreamer playing by their rules. They told you to avoid risk, to play it safe, to stay inside the lines. They made fear feel like wisdom. From the time you were young, you were conditioned to believe that the right thing to do was to avoid danger, avoid change, avoid failure. You were praised for following the rules, not for questioning them. You were rewarded for coloring inside the lines, not for drawing your own map. And what did that programming do? It didn't protect you, it caged you. It made you believe that safety and stability are the same thing. They're not. In fact, the biggest risk you'll ever take is trying to live a life without taking any. See, when you avoid risk, what you're really doing is choosing a slow decay. That 9 to 5 you cling to because it feels safe. It's only safe until you get laid off. That steady paycheck you think guarantees your survival, it's just a single point of failure wrapped in false security. Inflation doesn't care how loyal you are. Rising rents don't care how early you show up at the office. And while you're avoiding risks, your wealth is quietly eroding, your dreams are collecting dust, and someone else is out there taking the very risks that will one day allow them to buy back the time you're selling by the hour. People think taking a risk means being reckless. It doesn't. It means being awake. It means running the numbers, understanding the downside, and then deciding that the upside is worth it. It means understanding that life will punch you either way. The question is, are you going to get hit while building your dream or while building someone else's? Look at the people who are financially free. They weren't born fearless. They just made decisions based on vision, not fear. They knew that the comfort zone is where ambition goes to die. They understood that no one builds wealth without exposure. They were willing to look stupid for a season to look brilliant for a lifetime. You've got to stop worshiping security. You have to stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I don't even try? What if the real danger is not trying? What if the real risk is regret? When you stay in the so-called safe lane, you're not just avoiding failure, you're avoiding growth. You're avoiding the tension that forces you to level up. You're avoiding the hard decisions that lead to real transformation. You don't grow by watching others play the game. You grow by getting on the field. You grow when you have skin in the game. And I'll be real with you, the first risks you take won't feel good. Your voice will shake, your hands will sweat, people will question you, you'll question yourself. But do it anyway. That's how you build the muscle. That's how you break the script. You stop waiting for permission. You start betting on yourself. And yes, you might lose in the short term, but in the long term, that discomfort becomes currency. It buys you access to rooms that the comfortable will never enter. Comfort is cheap. Everybody can afford it. But freedom, That's expensive. You pay for it with discomfort, with effort, with courage, with a willingness to look foolish. You pay for it with risk. But once you've tasted freedom, you'll never want the script again. The office politics, the limited PTO, the ceiling someone else placed over your head, all of that will become unbearable because you'll know you were made for more. And here's the kicker. Risk doesn't get smaller the longer you wait. It gets bigger. The cost of inaction compounds. Every year you don't make a move, you're making a choice. And that choice has a price. Missed time, missed leverage, missed opportunities. One day you'll either be grateful you took the risk or you'll be haunted that you didn't. So don't confuse safety with wisdom. Don't mistake comfort for progress. If you're going to gamble, gamble on your potential. Risk is the entry price for anything worth having. Take it. Here's the truth that no one told you growing up. Money is not just paper. It's not just something you earn and save. Money is a language. It's a system. It's a set of tools used by those in the know and purposely hidden from everyone else. They didn't want you to understand how money really works, because if you did, you'd stop playing the game by their rules. You'd stop trading time for scraps, stop believing that saving a tiny fraction of your paycheck would somehow make you wealthy, and most importantly, you'd stop being controllable. That's why they trained you the way they did. That's why the script exists in the first place. From the time you were little, you were told to study hard, get good grades, go to college, and get a secure job. That's the narrative, right? The roadmap they handed out to all of us. But what they didn't tell you is that the system was built to benefit them, not you. It was designed so that you generate value, not capture it. They wanted employees, not entrepreneurs. They wanted consumers, not capital allocators. Because the second you start understanding capital, cash flow, and leverage, you stop needing them. You stop being dependent. Most people spend their lives running in circles, trying to earn more, save more, maybe even budget better. But the game isn't played on the earning side. It's played on the ownership side. Wealthy people think in terms of assets, ownership, equity. They ask, how do I build something once and get paid forever? While the rest are asking, how do I get a raise? That mindset gap, that's the real poverty line. You were never taught this because they knew what would happen if you figured it out. If they taught you that buying a small, boring business could generate more income than a corporate job, you'd rebel. If they showed you how to acquire assets with other people's money, you'd stop relying on HR departments and retirement accounts. If they told you that the IRS rewards investors and business owners with tax breaks while W-2 employees get squeezed the hardest, you'd ask questions they don't want to answer. And here's the kicker. They made money seem complicated on purpose. They made finance feel like a foreign language, locked behind Ivy League walls and Wall Street jargon, so you'd stay intimidated, overwhelmed, and passive. But wealth isn't complicated. It's just uncommon. The system is designed to convince you that you're not smart enough, not experienced enough, not connected enough to play at that level. That's a lie. You don't need an MBA to buy a laundromat. You don't need to be a tech genius to own a service business that cash flows every month. You just need to break the script they handed you and start learning from people who've already opted out. Money is not emotional. It's not moral. It's not evil or noble. It's a tool. A hammer isn't good or bad. It just depends on who's holding it and what they're building. Same goes for capital. The problem is they trained you to fear money, to avoid talking about it, to see it as something that only rich people deal with. But money is neutral. It only amplifies what you already are. If you're generous, it lets you give more. If you're driven, it gives you options. If you're curious, it lets you explore. But none of that is possible if you stay stuck in the script they gave you. When you start to see the flow of money as a game with players, rules, and strategies, you stop reacting and start positioning. You stop trying to work more hours and start asking better questions. How do I acquire income streams instead of building them from scratch? How do I get paid to learn while others are paying to be taught? And once those questions start surfacing, everything changes. This isn't about becoming a billionaire. This is about becoming unbreakable. It's about knowing that if your job disappears tomorrow, your life doesn't fall apart. That if the economy shifts, you have leverage. That you're not at the mercy of anyone else's approval, policy, or paycheck. And that level of freedom, it doesn't come from hard work alone. It comes from understanding how the game is actually played. The moment you realize you are trained to stay poor is the same moment you become dangerous.